Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. We are just going to wait a few more minutes to let more people in, and then we will start. So just a few more minutes. Okay, I think we are in the room, so I suggest to start, and if people are a bit late, they can always catch up. And before we start, we're going to record this webinar. So if you don't want to be in this recording, you can not join this and watch later. I'm going to start the recording now. Perfect. Great. Thanks, everyone. So first of all, welcome to this webinar on improving waste management in the MENA region through better data. And today we will be hearing from two CCAC-funded projects in Iraq and in Jordan. So our agenda today, we'll start with a short introduction to the CCAC by my colleague Donovan here in the webinar. And then we will move into lessons learned from our funded projects. First from Iraq, implemented by the local organization MILE, and then from Jordan, led by RAP. And just to let you know that we will keep the Q&A until the end of the webinar. So please hold your questions until then. But of course, in the meantime, you can also write your questions in the chat as they come. And joining us today are Donovan and myself from the CCAC Secretariat, along with CCAC focal points from the Mitigation Department at the Climate Change Center in Iraq and Climate Change Directorate of Jordan, along with project implementers, Rawa and Issam from MILE and Billy from RAP. Who will be presenting the findings from their projects. And with that, I will now hand over to my colleague Donovan to share a few words about the CCAC and our work in the waste sector. So Donovan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camille. And welcome everyone. We've been really looking forward to this webinar for some time on the basis of ongoing projects which are nearing completion in Jordan and Iraq. It's great to see so many friends of our work online, but also a lot of new faces as well, particularly from the MENA region. So welcome. We hope you enjoy this event. And as Camille said, it's being recorded as well. Just a brief introduction to the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, CCAC. It's been UN convened for the last 13 or 14 years or so. It is a voluntary partnership of countries and organisations that are dedicating themselves to substantial reductions in short-lived climate pollutants. We have at the moment almost 100 state partners and over 130 non-state partners. And that combination of the two is really important to us, and you would see this through our work. And please, you're encouraged to look through our website. There's a lot of great materials there. This balance of having both countries and also NGOs and non-state entities is really a critical part of the work that we do by bringing together a range of stakeholders with different strengths in a way that they can work together in terms of reducing SLCPs, which essentially, as we can see from the nice graphic there, the super pollutants are responsible for around half of global warming to date, but which have received very little attention compared to decarbonisation efforts. Next slide, please, Camille. SLCPs around methane. Many of you will know methane. It's a key driver of SLCP growth, but also black carbon, and in the waste work, particularly focused around open burning of waste at the household and community and informal sector level, but also on, of course, landfill sites that are unmanaged, which is a major contributor to black carbon through the waste system. HFCs, tropospheric ozone, and nitrous oxide. And we have a lot of materials online, and particularly a report in the last several months on nitrous oxide and also on methane across our key sectors, which include, of course, oil and gas, agriculture, cooling as well, not just waste. So we know that they're really critical forces of climate change. They're responsible for around half of global temperature rise. You can see in the diagrams there the trajectory and the necessity really of both combining decarbonisation, which of course we know will take much longer, but it is the key effort through the Paris Agreement to significantly decrease carbon emissions. We know that carbon sits in the atmosphere for around a century. One of the benefits, though, of working at the SLCP level, particularly methane mitigation and reduction, is that the impacts are much more immediate in terms of a decade or so. And in case of other SLCPs like black carbon, of course, a matter of days and weeks. So by focusing on SLCPs, it is complementary to decarbonisation, but it also buys more time in terms of decarbonisation, which we know is a very difficult transition to make. But with SLCPs, we've identified at CCAC that there's a range of actions which can be taken at little to no cost that provide investment opportunities for circular economies and which really engage communities and governments to work together in terms of planning. A very good example that we'll talk about a little bit today is organic waste, for example, which sometimes comprises as much as 50 to 60% of waste streams, which really has no place in waste streams, food loss and waste, and it certainly has no place in landfills. So we know there's certain actions that we can take which will have broader benefits and which are not that difficult and don't involve much technology or much investment, but they do require a clarity of supportive policy and the engagement of a range of stakeholders. And the projects today really speak to those efforts as well. Next slide, please, Camille. And so this project is a part of the broader CCAC support for both countries, but also non-state actors and non-government organisations, some of which are represented here today as our key speakers. But we also work on policy and research, and you'll see a number of publications online. We also have the Global Methane Status Report being released later on this year. We have targeted expert assistance for countries that wish to have sort of immediate support for developing plans and policy ideas and frameworks around key areas. We support governments in methane action plans and mitigation plans across SLCPs at the policy level, but also at the level of in terms of investment opportunities and identifying investment opportunities. We support countries in strengthening SLCPs and particularly methane through their NDCs, for example, and the third round of NDCs are due, of course, through this year. We support the Global Methane Pledge, and there's plenty of information of that online. And like I said, there's the Global Methane Status Report coming out later this year, which will show progress and opportunities through meeting the Global Methane Pledge to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030. And we also coordinate a number of global initiatives, such as low methane, which was launched at COP28, and also the COP29 reducing methane from organic waste, the Road Declaration, which was launched at COP29 last year. So CCAC also acts as a coordinating and supportive organisation for those global initiatives. Slide, thanks. The waste sector is a critical part of this. It accounts for 20% of anthropogenic methane emissions and is the fastest growing source of methane emissions. And we also know that landfills are a particular problem. They are the largest contributor to methane emissions, especially at the urban level, where sometimes some research has indicated that as much as 50% of methane emissions in an urban setting comes from the largest landfills. We also know that in order to meet the Paris Agreement's ambitions, and certainly by not allowing temperature increases of 2.2 degrees, that we need to significantly focus on waste because it is the fastest growing source. It also lends itself to solutions such through circular economies and through clear policy guidelines to take out waste streams from landfill, which really shouldn't be there in the first place. But we also know, we can know for sure that almost all data points to a really significant increase in waste over the next 2 or 3 generations. And it's really critical we take actions now because the problems that we face currently with landfills and with waste that is generated is significant, but they will pale into insignificance to the challenges that we'll be facing in 20 or 30 years' time. So it really is a very critical sector for us to have a positive impact on. Next one, Camille. I think if we were to visualize it, earlier this year we created with our partnership a waste and mitigation hierarchy, which really promotes something which you'll see in the road declaration, the concept of ADVI, avoid, divert, valorize, and invest in infrastructure. And you can see here, hopefully in a visual way, and this is available on our website as well for you to have a look and to download and to use as well, is that there's key actions, actors, and benefits which we can identify in the waste sector. It does lend itself to multiple strategies which are applicable to particular contexts, which can be implemented in the poorest of countries with very little investment to obviously the wealthier countries, which are generating the vast proportion of waste globally. So we have a number of entry points, and one of the things about these sets of projects that we'll talk about today is they identify the national opportunities and the particular opportunities which exist in 2 countries. But in all countries, there are different kinds of opportunity, and there are also different kinds of circular economy opportunities by thinking about waste in different ways. So the waste and mitigation hierarchy really takes a classic waste hierarchy and puts it in the context of mitigation and climate change. And hopefully it's a useful little diagram for a lot of people. Camille, next slide.
Thanks,
Great. I'm going to pass back to Camille now to introduce and to provide an overview of the projects, and then we'll hear from our key speakers. But welcome, and hopefully that context was useful, and we really hope you enjoy the event today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction, Donovan. And as you highlighted, one way of the CCAC of helping countries delivering on SLCP abatement is to fund projects, and this is exactly what this webinar will highlight. So insights from 2 country-led initiatives in Iraq and Jordan. And as you will see, both projects focus on strengthening data systems to support waste sector strategies and climate goals, including national reporting. So they were developed in direct response to requests from national governments, reflecting their own priorities. So the outcomes of those projects provide really practical examples of how stronger data and institutional capacity can really accelerate low-emission waste management across the region. So the idea of this webinar is to show that those processes come with significant challenges, of course, but also valuable strategies to learn from. So for everyone in the audience, it will be especially relevant after to reflect on those lessons and experiences in your own context, particularly in this important NDC year. So in Iraq, from 2023 to 2025, the MILE Organization for Environmental Protection led a project to develop a national waste sector strategy build government capacity for action on SLCPs, and update the country's waste emissions inventory. I'm not going to give too many details because Issam and Rawa will present afterwards. It's just to give you a sneak peek now. And in Jordan, the project also ran from 2023 to 2024. And RAP was leading a project to strengthen national capacity to account for SLCP pollutants in the waste sector. And this work supported integrated assessments and informed policy development to guide more climate responsive waste management. And same here, Billy will give you more information about the lessons learned and insights from this project. Now we can move on to the presentation. And before this, I would like to welcome Mr. Ali Abdul Hussein, head of the mitigation department at the Climate Change Center in Iraq, who is going to give a few words. So you are welcome to join and unmute yourself to give a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Camelia, for giving me this chance to express our appreciation for your efforts. At first, I am Ali Abdul Hussein, the head of mitigation department at the Climate Change Center in Iraq. I'm honored to be with you today, and I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Yusuf Moayed, the Director of Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment of Iraq, and our CCAC focal point. Unfortunately, Mr. Yusuf was unable to join us today. Our presentation will cover the lessons learned from the CCAC project, which aim to improve waste management in the MENA region. For Iraq, this project is implemented by the MILE Organization for Environment Protection and focuses on developing a waste sector strategy to support our NDC action plan and NAMA project. For the government of Iraq, our vision for waste management goes beyond simple collection trash. We see solid waste as a growing challenge directly linked to population growth, but also as a significant opportunity to be transformed from a burden into an economic resource. Our vision is ambitious: to develop a comprehensive national strategy, update our emissions inventory, and sustainably reduce methane and black carbon emissions. This includes the development of a project like a proposed waste-to-energy plant in Baghdad that could process thousands of tons of waste daily to generate electricity and reduce emissions. This is where the support from the Climate and Clean Air Coalition is so vital. The CCAC serves as a first point of call for countries on non-CO2 greenhouse gases emission, providing a comprehensive system to help us deliver on our goals. This project is funded by CCAC and UNEP, and their partnership provide the essential technical assistance, funding, and knowledge sharing we need to success. For instance, this support has been instrumental in creating our new waste emissions inventory and GIS mapping system, which are key to data-driven decision-making. Ultimately, achieving our vision requires coordination and cooperation at all levels. We believe that by working together with partners like the CAC, we can turn our waste challenge into real environmental and economic opportunity for the people of Iraq. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we can hear the presentation from the MILE organization from Rawa and Issam.
Thank you very much, Camille. Yes, the presentation will be done by Rawa, but I will just add a few words to Mr. Ali. First of all, we appreciate please continue support with this project and collaborating with this project, because one of the successful points for this project, which is implemented in Iraq, it was the coordination from Ministry of Environment in general, and Mr. Ali and Mr. Yusuf especially. They provided all the support. Before we start with the presentation, because when we started with this project, we start with an assessment. What is the current situation? What is the size of the challenge that we are facing before starting with the project? I will say that during the assessment process, we found there's a lot of work has been done in the past in the waste management, and also for collaboration between different stakeholders that they are related to the waste management, but not connected to each other. So we found there is a gap for the data, and also we found there is no standard procedure for sharing data between the stakeholders. Then the coordination, there was a gap between the stakeholders. In fact, between the department inside the Ministry of Environment, so which is impacting the project. Then when we started with our survey, with the study, we found weak infrastructures for the waste management, and I will leave that for Rawa to go through it, but also I will say through this project we provided a list, and through our study we provide a list of the recommendations to be part of the Iraqi NDC. Thank you, Kamil. I will be standing by.
Thank you, Mr. Isam. Thank you, Mr. Donovan and Mrs. Kamidia. I just asked about my voice. Is it clear?
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Rawa. You can let me know when you want to change the slides.
Thank you. So it's my pleasure to present to the final results of the study entitled Waste Sector Strategy to Supporting Iraq NDC Action Plan and NAMA project, which is focusing on 3 key areas: Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil. And this study was carried out by the MILE organization in cooperation with the Ministry of Environment and with the support of CCAC. So the main purpose of this presentation is to share with you the key findings and recommendation, and to show how waste management can be transformed from an environmental burden into an economic and environmental opportunities of Iraq. So now, as you know, climate change has become one of the greatest global challenges, and it's increasing the frequency of heat waves, floods, and droughts, and Iraq is not immune to these impacts. So the solid waste sector is a significant contributor to greenhouse gases, especially methane and black carbon, and both of which are short-lived climate pollutants. These pollutants have strong warming effects and also worsen air pollution. In Iraq, waste volumes are rising rapidly due to population growth and weak infrastructure. Unfortunately, much of this waste is disposed of through open burning or in uncontrolled dump sites. That's leading to severe environmental and health impacts. So this study provides a comprehensive picture of the current situation, analyzes methane and black carbon emission, and proposes practical science-based solution. Please to the next slide, Camelia. Thank you. So the study focused on 4 main objectives. The first one is about the developing national waste sector strategy, covering collection, transportation, sorting, recycling, and treatment. The second one is about the updating the national waste emission inventory in line with IPCC methodology. And the other one is reducing methane and black carbon emission through the application of modern waste management technologies. The last one is the changing the perception of waste from being a burden into being a valuable resources that can create green jobs and support the economy. Next slide. Our study targets 3 key locations. Please, can you skip this slide to the next slide? Thank you. So our study targeted 3 key locations. The first one is Baghdad, which is the largest city and the capital, and generated over 10 million tons of waste in 2023. And the other one is Basra, which is the Iraqi's major industrial and commercial hub, and generated about 941,000 tons in 2023. And the last one is Erbil, which is the capital of the Kurdistan region, that generated approximately 753,000 tons in 2023. These 3 cities were chosen because they represent different characteristics of Iraqi's urban areas. So Baghdad as a dense population center, Basra as an economic hub, and Erbil as a growing city with a special administrative context. Next slide. So our findings show that waste management in Iraq faces multiple challenges across collection, transport, and treatment. In Baghdad, municipalities are responsible for collection, but there are no active private companies anymore, unlike in the past. The city operates 9 official transfer stations and 16 unofficial ones, which reflects a partial but insufficient system. But in Basra and Erbil, waste collection is also centrally managed, but most of landfill sites are non-sanitary and lack environmental approval, which is leading to soil, water, and air pollution. Okay. Recycling and sorting facilities are almost absent, which means most waste is sent directly to landfill or open burning without utilizing its potential value. Next slide. Okay. Methane, which is considered a greenhouse gas over 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide over 20 years, is produced mainly from decomposition of organic waste in landfills. But on the other hand, black carbon comes from the open burning of waste like plastic and rubber. Between 2017 and 2023, can you take the next slide, please? As we see in this table, between 2017 and 2023, data shows a steady rise in waste volumes and in emission. For example, in Baghdad alone, methane emission in 2023 were estimated at more than 68,000. This upward trend is alarming and highlights the urgent need for mitigation measures, and controlling these emissions must be a priority if Iraq is to meet its climate and air quality goals. Next slide. Thank you. An important focus of this project has been the promotion of waste to bioenergy as a sustainable solution. Waste in Iraq is not only an environmental burden, but it is also holds significant potential to be converted into clean energy. By adopting bioenergy technologies, we can reduce methane and black carbon emission, while at the same time generating renewable electricity to meet part of Iraqi's growing energy demand. By moving in this direction has not been easy. One of the main challenges has been the need to bring together different actors, including municipalities, ministries, the private sector, and civil society. Each has a important role to play, but coordination between them is often complex. In addition, we faced difficulties in consolidating the data sets, and waste-related data is often scattered across institutions, collected in different formats, and sometimes incomplete. So this makes it hard to create a clear and reliable national picture of emission and waste flows. That's why one of the most valuable legacies of this project has been the creation of platform to consolidate data, and this platform allows institutions to share, compare, and coordinate information, which builds a foundation of future planning and investment in the waste sector. The waste to bioenergy represents a promising pathway of Iraq, but achieving it requires strong collaboration and reliable data, and both of which this project has helped to achieve. Next slide, please. Now about the challenges. About the lack of skilled staff and training. One of the main challenges is the shortage of specialized staff in waste management. And for example, during our assessment in Baghdad, we found that many municipal workers had no prior training on modern waste handling techniques, which limited efficiency and safety. And about the weak infrastructure. The infrastructure for waste management is insufficient and outdated. For example, from field visits to landfill sites, we observed that most lack proper lining, leachate collection, or gas recovery system, making them non-sanitary and environmentally harmful. And now for limited funding, the funding for waste management projects is very limited compared to the actual needs. For example, in Basra, municipalities reported difficulties in maintaining collection trucks and equipment due to budgets shortage, leading to irregular collection schedule. About open burning and informal dump sites. Open burning and uncontrolled dump are still widely practiced. For example, in Erbil, we document cases of waste being open burn near residential area, and that causing visible smoke and health complaints from nearby communities. About the low environmental awareness, public awareness about the proper waste disposal remains low. For example, in all three cities, Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil, we observed household waste mixed together without separation of organics, plastic, or recyclable, which reduce opportunities for recycling and increasing the emission. Next slide, please. About the key finding, from all the data we analyzes, we can conclude that solid waste is one of the Iraqi major environmental challenges, and it's growing. So in Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil, the amount of waste generated per person is high, between 1 to 1.25 kilogram per day. And at the same time, the large share of organic and plastic waste in the waste stream presents a real opportunities. These fractions can be used for composting or energy recovery, turning waste from a problem into resources. Next slide. Currently, Iraqi waste data system face major gaps, and municipal records are fragmented, and there is no centralized national database, and a monitoring system remain very limited. This situation makes it difficult to plan effectively and to design evidence-based policies. But with support from CCAC and UNEP, Iraq has started to develop a waste emission inventory and apply tools such as GIS for mapping waste sites. The next step will be establishment of a digital national waste database, which is directly linked to the Ministry of Environment to ensure accurate reporting under Iraqi's update NDC. And there are also plans to introduce IoT sensors for temperature or for methane to monitor methane emission from landfill in real time. Next slide. Okay. This about the dashboard. This dashboard presents the recorded level of methane and black carbon emissions from the waste sector. It allows us to clearly see the trend over time and compare the situation across Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil. And it's important because it helps the decision makers monitor emissions in real time and identify problem areas and design
I think we lost you, Rawa. Maybe while Rawa reconnects, do you want to take over, Issam?
Yes, we reached the dashboard and the platforms that we are talking about. As we say in Iraq, to improve the waste management and work on reducing LCPs, we wanted to see the figures, the data, and how that will be impacted, and where is the main sources and which geographical area. So in these three provinces, we collected the data and put it in the platform to see how it will be changed. Besides this data that we got, primary data, we collected secondary data from some satellite imagery, remote sensing from NASA, and we created some scenarios to see where is the black carbon is coming, where is the most area impacted. As Rawan mentions, we have a lot of the cases and the health cases, diseases in the certain area, and when we link this two data sets to each other and this platform on the map, you will see very clearly what is the source of the black carbon and methane, and which geographical area it's heavily impacted by this emission. Yeah. Next, please. Just to add for the platform, we created this one for the waste management, but also we provided the recommendation and suggestion for the Ministry of Environment to have a national platform to bring all the stakeholders' data to this platform. First of all, to avoid duplicate of the efforts, and second, also to have image about the current situation with the waste and the emissions. And third, also you can measure the projects against the baselines. What was the pollutions and where we are after the project has been done. So one of the things that in the study and recommendations was provided is to waste to energy, bioenergy, and that how much the waste can be used and to generate a certain amount of the electricity. That was the pilot in Baghdad. Also through this process and the studies for the projects that we provided, that it's not just reducing the emissions from the methane and black carbon, also creating the opportunities and jobs, green jobs for the people. Yeah, next.
Can you, yeah. We have to previous
you back.
slide.
So
Back to previous
Camilla, I
slide.
will leave it for her.
Okay.
Thank you. Rawa, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, previous slide, turning waste into resources. I think it's, yeah, thank you. So Baghdad alone generated about 10 million tons of waste annually, and most of which is disposed of through open burning or open dumping, and this leads to very high emission of methane and black carbon. And the proposed solution is the development of waste-to-energy plant with a capacity of processing 3,000 tons per day and generating approximately 75 megawatts of electricity. So the expected impact of this project goes beyond clean energy generation, and it will be reduce methane emission from uncontrolled decomposition, lower black carbon emission from open burning, and create green job opportunities in collection, sorting, plant operation, and maintenance. Next slide, please. Okay. So now we have building a partnership for better waste management. Effective waste management in Iraq requires collaboration and coordination across different actors. So now we talk about the Ministry of Environment and its role. The Ministry of Environment is the central authority responsible for environmental policy and regulation in Iraq. It plays a leading role in developing a national strategy for waste management, setting emission standard, and ensuring that the sector is integrated into Iraqi NDC under the Paris Agreement. So the Ministry of Environment has an oversight role, monitoring compliance with the law and international commitments. Now we have municipalities and its role. The municipalities are directly responsible for day-to-day operation, and this includes waste collection, street cleaning, transportation to disposal sites, and the municipality also play an enforcement role, ensuring that household, business, and industries comply with waste disposal regulation. And the private sector is recognized as a key driver of innovation and investment in waste management, and campaigns can invest in recycling plants, composting facilities, and waste-to-energy projects, and providing both financial resources and technical expertise. Now we have NGOs, which plays a complementary role in the waste sector, and the organization like MIAL contribute by conducting field data collection, and they are also active in awareness campaigns that engage communities in waste reduction, separation, and recycling practices. So NGOs provide capacity building program that strengthen the skills of municipal staff and young professionals, which is creating a stronger foundation for long-term improvements in waste management. About the international partner, which is CCAC, UNEP, UNDP. So international organization provides technical assessment, funding, and global knowledge share. CCAC supports Iraq to reducing SLCB, methane and black carbon from the waste sector. But the UNEP assists in environmental governance, emission inventories, and system design, such as GIS mapping and national database. About the UNEP, about the UNDP, focused on sustainable development, green jobs, and capacity building at the situation. Through this partnership, Iraq gains access to international best practices, capacity development, and financial resources that accelerate progress in updating waste management. The main message of this solid of this slide is that successful waste management cannot be achieved by a single actor. Sure, it requires to strong partnership and coordination at all levels and national and international. Next slide, please. Okay, recommendation. Based on our findings, the study makes several recommendations. The first one is raise public environmental awareness through school, universities, and media campaigns. The other one is adopt modern sorting and recycling practices across municipalities and introduce waste to energy project as a part of national infrastructure and ban open burning of waste and enforce penalties for violations and encourage private sector investment in waste management to create jobs and generate economic and environmental benefits. So this recommendation would reduce emission while also creating sustainable development opportunities. Next slide. Conclusion. Thank you. Now, first we talk about the conclusion. First, I want to emphasize that waste management is not only environmental responsibility, but also an economic opportunity that can create jobs and support the economy. Second, success requires collaboration between the public and private sector. No single actor can achieve it alone, sure. And we need strong system for data collection and management to make informed decisions and design effective policies. Partnership between government, NGOs, and the private sector plays an important role in achieving project goals and improving waste management practices. And finally, we must adopt a long-term strategic approach that aligns with Iraqi national development goals and climate communities. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Hawa and Isam. If the audience have any questions, you can write them in the chat and then we will respond at the end of the presentation. But before this, we would like to add some lessons learned from a CCAC-funded project in Jordan. And for this, we will welcome Mr. Bilal Shkarin for opening remarks for this project. So you can now unmute yourself and share a few words. Hello, Mr. Bilal. You can unmute yourself and share a few opening remarks if you want.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I don't know if I'm clear. My voice is.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly.
I'm so sorry, but we are in the African Second Climate Week, so we are doing things, and sometimes the connection is not so well. What I would like to begin my remarks about is we are so gratitude for the CCAC who's always doing the unique stuff which not always it is considered or remarked by others. So in any development in this world, when you tackle the smaller and the side issues, which is much more better than just being with the big ones and things like that. So the entity and the alliance who raised the importance of the short climate pollutants and how to be tackled within the NDC countries and to be taken into consideration according to the amount of their in climatic reflection than even the other greenhouse gases. It was the CCAC alliance, and they were the ones that helped all countries, especially developing countries, to move on within that. In Jordan, since we had our own NDCs, and it was mentioned even in our NDCs that we're gonna take care within the waste management and within the SLCPs. In Jordan, we are talking about methane sources. It is more than 78% comes from the solid waste. That's why we've worked with the CCEC and the implementer entities RAB, who's gonna who did a very good comprehensive coordination between entities from in Jordan, from the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Local Affairs, the other Greater Amman Municipality, and the other related entities who is a player or a member of the loop of waste management. So within that, I will not go for the technicalities because it will be presented to you in details now within the RAP representative. What I would like to say it here is that again to reiterate our thanks to the CCAC, and we are in the year or the upcoming year mostly for all of the countries to renew and update their NDCs to be might be even if it was until 2030 or if it was extended to 2035. One of the most important issues to include all of the SLCPs, the short-lived climate pollutants, the reduction of those, and the management of the waste. How could it be a finance resource? How could it be an energy resource? How could it be something that will reduce the harm of that waste and at the same time make use of it? Thank you so much. I will leave it for the others now to take much of their time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining from the forum. It must be a very busy week. And now moving on to the presentation from RAP. And Billy, if you want to take over the presentation.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you to Mr. Bilal also for the introduction. Hi everyone. My name is Billy Harris. I am a senior analyst at the Waste and Resources Action Programme, and I just want to talk quite quickly about the project that we did supporting Jordan with modelling and policy ideas for reduction of short-lived climate pollutants. Can I have the next slide, please? I'll quickly cover what's in the presentation. I'll skip over very briefly a little bit about RAP. Then I'll talk about the brief for the project and how we set out to deliver it. I'll talk through the outputs for the project and then some of the challenges that we faced and how we met those challenges and some of the lessons learned. And then I think I'll finish up briefly with some next steps and sort of recommendations potentially for future work that I think could come out of the project. I think quite a few of them actually will overlap with some of the recommendations that colleagues from MIO have already made in the Iraq context. I think it's interesting to hear some of the similarities with things like data. RAP is a global environmental action NGO that concentrates on product and food systems and the transition to a circular economy and circular living. To save time, I won't go into it in any detail. If anyone is interested, we have a website at www.rap.ngo. Please visit the website if you want to know more. but otherwise I'll move on to the next slide. So a little bit of introduction on the context. Jordan is a country of around 11.5 million people. And over the past 10 years, it has experienced a great deal of population growth. So somewhere around 20% of the population, by some estimates, driven in large part by a number of displacements and a considerable influx of refugees. In terms of the country itself, it is estimated to produce somewhere between 2.7 and 3 million tonnes of municipal solid waste each year. And this waste is dealt with by around 20 overall landfill sites. Some of those sites are, I say around 20, some of them are not receiving very much waste currently, whereas other sites are in fuller operation. There's a smaller number of fully operational sites, and the biggest one of those is the sanitary landfill sites at Al-Gabawi in Greater Amman municipality, which takes around half of all of the country's solid waste. The remaining landfill sites are effectively controlled tipping sites, so there's no uncontrolled landfill as such, but there are a number of not unsanitary controlled tips. Formal waste management coverage is generally good. In 2019, it was estimated to cover around 90% of the population in urban areas, slightly less in rural, but there was a national goal of achieving 100% coverage for all areas. In the the waste sector green growth plan. And the recycling rate for the region the area is perhaps slightly lower than the regional average. The data is not so strong on this, but it's estimated to be around 7% overall. I would add to this that Jordan as a country already has quite a strong strategy and commitment in this area. So the country is already moving, for example, to effectively close or recondition its non-sanitary sites to move to 100% sanitary landfill with methane capture, for instance, under the Green Growth Plan. Next slide, please. So the project, we were invited to bid for the project by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. As Camille has already covered, this was originally at the request of the Government of Jordan and the Ministry of Environment. And the focus of the project was to support the delivery of waste sector targets to reduce short-lived climate pollutants, and also to develop a model to assess greenhouse gas emissions from waste management in Jordan. That is primarily methane emissions from landfill in the Jordanian context. And following on the modelling work, the second phase of the project was to develop a portfolio of policy measures for consideration that could then feed in towards potential mitigation action. I'll skip the last point and come on to it in the next slide, actually, if we move on to that. So in terms of project delivery, the first action was to convene an advisory group. This group was based in Jordan and comprised representatives from national government and local government, also from academia and the Royal Scientific Society of Jordan, and business and trade groups. And I would really stress how essential their support was, both providing background information and to ensure that the project was relevant in a Jordanian context. I really at this stage, I'd like to thank the advisory group for their input. Really, they were very generous in sharing both the data that they had and also their experience of waste management in that local context. We then convened or began a research phase, which I will talk about shortly, where our aim really was to build a robust picture of both historical and current waste arisings and compositions in the country in order to then develop a first order decay landfill model in order to produce an estimate of methane emissions. And we also developed a number of supplementary models covering combustion of waste, both through controlled municipal incineration, if you like, and also open burning of waste. And there was a part of the model also looked at composting. This was developed really as an addition to the models so that we could understand the impact of some of the policy options that we then wanted to set out. We conducted an online research and short sort of informal literature review looking at the policy options, which we then modelled some of the potential scenarios and then wrote those up into a number of briefs. And the report output is effectively the model along with its methodology and then a set of policy briefs and recommendations for Jordan. Next slide, please. In terms of challenges, because of the international and security situations, I think one of the biggest challenges that we faced really was that we were not able to travel, unfortunately, to meet with the advisory group and also to also visit some of the sites that we'd be writing about. I think it would have been hugely advantageous if we could actually spend some time on the various waste management sites and watch practice as it actually is in the local environment. However, we did manage this. I'll come on to how we dealt with those issues. Data was definitely a challenge. It is essential, obviously, for landfill modelling, particularly because historical data is really important in terms of understanding the amount of carbon that is already in the landfill site. But getting historical data can often be very challenging. IPPC data recommends, I think it's the last 50 years that should be included within the model, and for a lot of countries trying to get accurate data on waste that was being landfilled 40 or 50 years ago can just be extremely difficult. And there was also perhaps an issue with consistency of waste data. I would say my experience was that Jordan does not lack data on waste. There's actually a lot of data and lots of different stakeholders are collecting it, but the picture is somewhat fragmented. There are a number of different sources and they all paint a slightly different picture of the amount of waste, probably because each of these sources is taking data from different stakeholders, and it may effectively have a slightly different scope or a slightly different definition to another waste source, to another data source. So we found, for example, that the National Green Growth Plan, what was it called? The National Monitoring and Information System, and the data that were published on the Department of Statistics website, they all had very strong overlaps, but there were also differences which required some thought as to how we adopted the best figures to go into the model. And then there was also less importantly, I think, there was a lack of comprehensive national level waste composition data, although fortunately there were many local studies that we were able to access, and in the context of landfill, the waste composition was stable enough that it didn't significantly affect our modelling too much. An obvious one, I suppose, is there was also a lack of data in informal waste management, so uncontrolled disposal to land or open burning of waste. by definition, this is outside of the formal administrative systems, and so it is not something on which data is typically available. A final challenge that we came up with at the end of the project was our model produced a noticeably lower greenhouse gas estimate than the figure that was included in the 4th National Communication on greenhouse gas emissions, and this was a subject of quite an interesting debate within the advisory group. We weren't able to look at the full detail of the original model that was used for the 4th national contribution, but the primary driver was a difference in the amount of waste that was assumed to be present in landfills and currently being landfilled. And we think that it's probable that there was relating to my earlier point, that the two models may have a slightly different scope for the waste arisings that they're modelling. Next slide, please. In terms of how we met these challenges, so we worked a lot in terms of online meetings with the steering group, which worked well. I think it took perhaps a little while to get to know people a little bit better, which is important in a steering group so that people feel they can talk openly and share information. But it was effective, particularly when we got to more complex discussions. We tended to take those conversations offline and circulate an email just to give people the chance to give a more detailed response. I think it took the project group at RAP perhaps a little while to really find the best way of working with the group, but once we arrived at that, it was extremely useful. We used an approach where, in terms of the issues around waste data, we presented options on waste arisings. So we tended to present multiple options and multiple data sources to the group, and then we worked to gain agreement between the different stakeholders on what the most robust approach would be. So we took an iterative approach, proposing different methods, collecting feedback, adjusting the approach, and effectively we went through several cycles of iteration in developing the model in order to come up with what we felt were the best available parameters. Similarly, the lack of data on open burning was resolved by building effectively a separate module within the tool. This had parameters in terms of the amount of open burning. This was based on an estimate that was supplied to us by the Royal Scientific Society of Jordan, but it had assumptions about the proportion of open burning that were easy to vary by the user of the model, so that should more studies become available that present more accurate data, it will be very easy to change that part of the model. We also created an option to switch that module on and off, so that it's possible to limit the model only to look at formally collected waste. The main reason for doing that is that because we don't have robust data on open burning, it does present quite a big source of uncertainty. So it allows the user to decide how they want to use the data within the model, whether they want to have the full picture with some uncertainty, or whether they want to focus only on formally managed waste. The mismatch with the 4th national contribution is something, as I've said, that we couldn't fully get to the bottom of and resolve. And I think this presents an opportunity both to improve the current model, the model that we have developed. It could be there that the work for the national communications could feed into a revision of that model to make it even more robust. But it may also present an opportunity to improve the way the national communication modelling is done too. And it does suggest, I think, that Jordan may benefit more from moving more towards a tier 2 or tier 3 approach to modelling landfill emissions, since it does appear that using the purely regional default estimates in the IPCC model might actually be somewhat overestimating the emissions from Jordanian waste management. Next slide, please. In terms of project outputs, I'll quickly skip over these. So we have a number of models which cover landfill, combustion of waste, and composting. And to use these, the user enters the composition and arisings on a year-by-year basis, and the model outputs the emissions and decay profile for landfilled waste, but also the lifetime emission from all waste management sources from all of the wastes disposed of in that year. That's useful because you might want to compare emissions from perhaps an energy from waste plant with emissions from a landfill site, where obviously for energy from waste, all of the emissions are assumed to happen in year. So it makes sense to have all of the landfill emissions presented for that year too. And again, we've focused on transparency within the model, so we haven't hidden any of the underlying numbers. And this is to make it easier for the users to update both historical and current waste management data and assumptions as the quality of data improves. We also produce some policy briefs and suggestions covering a range of options, including looking at the potential impacts of the existing policy of moving to sanitary landfill with methane capture, but also looking at retrofitting gas capture to non-sanitary landfills as those landfill sites are closed down. Source separation of waste, particularly for composting, but also looking at anaerobic digestion for biogas and smaller scale composting through maybe localized urban composting hubs. We looked at public awareness and behaviour change campaigns, and also food waste prevention initiatives that might be applied in the commercial sector. So perhaps working with markets or working with food producers to reduce production waste. And finally, a short brief looking at options for finance, partnerships and technology transfer. If we move to the next slide. I'll skip over this one very quickly. It's not particularly useful looking at it again. It quickly summarizes an example of what the model will put out in terms of its, in terms of the sort of outputs that one gets from the model. So effectively, we see that it gives the total emissions of each of the main gases. It also does give a black carbon emission for open burning, although that's not visible here. It converts those emissions to GWP 100 to enable them to be aggregated and compared. And then the columns on the right present the lifetime disposal emission for both landfill and then combined for all waste management options as a whole. And then the graphs on the bottom show the decay profile for emissions from land disposal over time, and then the L0 or lifetime emission for all of the different waste management options that are in play in Jordan to enable the comparison on a year-by-year basis. Next slide, please.
Yes, and maybe just Billy, if you could wrap up.
Hurry it up a little.
Perfect, so we can have time to respond to questions.
No problem.
Thanks.
So yeah, this one just sets out some of the policy briefs. I'll skip through these very quickly. So the main impacts we found were from transition to sanitary landfill, which we thought could, on modelling, could avoid somewhere around 500,000 tonnes of GWP 100 per year, and also retrofitting sanitary sites on non-sanitary sites on closure, which we believe could save around 3.5 million tonnes of GWP over the remaining lifetime of those sites. The other two options that were very impactful, both saving over 100,000 tonnes per year, would be anything looking at source separation of organic waste, which could either be for composting or for anaerobic digestion and power generation. Next slide, please. you want to skip to the next slide? Yeah. In terms of lessons learned, I think absolutely key on this is building proper partnership and trust with the advisory group, so that we oh, you skip to the previous slide there, so I think it jumped to basically building trust in order to unlock that essential expertise and local knowledge from the advisory group and building rapport. The iterative nature of the project was really important. Every time we got some pushback or disagreement from the advisory group, it made the project better because we reviewed what we were doing, and it really did help to improve the numbers and the assumptions that we were using. And best results very much came from testing options, getting feedback, and refining what we did over multiple iterations. I also think there's some lessons about capacity building. I think it highlights the benefits that maybe more consistent and standardized data systems and definitions could bring. And it very much, I think, also supports the idea of trying to progress towards tier 2 or tier 3 modeling rather than default modeling for outcomes, because I think the outcomes that you get are actually much improved. And then final slide, please, which in terms of suggestions from further work, and I think this is where I kind of feel some of the lessons may be quite similar to some of the lessons from the Iraq project. I think strengthening data and reporting systems, so guidance around operational measuring of waste arisings, but also how those arisings are defined, what the scope of them is, and maybe how data are collected, stored and disseminated, I think is really important. More detailed standardized guidance on waste composition analysis to achieve national compositional data sets, I think would potentially be very useful. And similarly, monitoring and evaluation guidance, and I think perhaps standardized templates to capture not only benefits but also costs of interventions in future, I think would enable projection of costs and benefits for future interventions as well. I think next slide, please, which I think that's it finished though. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks to all of the speakers, both national representatives, but also the NGOs that were involved in the projects themselves, for sharing not only the content of the projects, but I think the qualitative aspects which were identified through the project with regard to relationships, with regard to bringing together stakeholders and so on. So I've got about 3 or 4 questions here, and please put them in the Q&A, and I'll read out on behalf to make it a bit easier because of different sort of connection issues. The first one was probably answered more through Billy's presentation, but really the opportunities of linking to NDCs and improving data to NDCs came through in a few questions. I think, Billy, you answered this quite thoroughly. It was quite suggestive in terms of the way that the project could support identifying data sources which would make for stronger NDCs. But perhaps Roa and Isam, you might reflect on the opportunities that arose through the project to talk to Iraq's NDCs and to be able to get those stakeholders in the room, and the possibility of linking such projects and their outcomes to NDC ambitions. Be great if you could maybe reflect upon that. I'll let you take it away. Robo or Isam, do you want to address that in the context of Iraq?
Thank you, Donovan. I was expecting Rawa to answer this question. Yes, for the as I mentioned through the project, through the assessments and conducting workshops between the stakeholders and conducting the survey for the gap analysis and low infrastructures, I would say lack of the infrastructures, we contributed and recommendations to the NDCs to improve, as in Iraqi NDC embedded the methane and black carbon targets into NDC and waste law. And also we contributed to Iraqi law through this project, which is also supporting the achievements with the NDC. Thank you, Durban.
Thank you, Issam. And I think, Billy, you replied to this quite comprehensively. So I'll move on to the additional question as well, and that is, I know that the organizations also work in other countries of the region, and certainly some of the lessons learned around data, around the consistency of that data over time. Obviously, the fragmentation of data came through a lot, as well as the fragmentation of stakeholders and the opportunities that came through the projects of being able to close some of those gaps. So we had a few questions asking about the regional applicability of the lessons learned from both projects and really get a sense of whether this is a typical problem in the region and what sort of lessons could come from the two projects for the wider MENA region as well, for people online from neighboring countries. Happy for maybe Billy, you can kick off on this one, and then we'll come back to Rewa and Issam.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's not just the MENA region. I think this is a really common problem globally, and I think it's a problem everywhere. We have the same situation in the UK when we look at data sets. You know, if you measure data 3 different ways, you usually get 3 different answers. Is sometimes the impression I get. It's a genuinely complicated area. I think, in all honesty, it's an area where further work is needed. My feeling has usually been that the most effective way to do it is to have one agency that has fundamental kind of national level oversight over waste statistics. So you may have almost like a hierarchical system where perhaps each of the individual regions is collecting data, but it's doing so in a method mandated centrally, effectively, by a waste plan, and that data is being aggregated in a consistent way by a single organization, so that there is one sort of key data point that is robust and reliable. The impression I was getting is that there are multiple systems currently in place, and I think that's always going to be an issue, because you may find that who the organizations reporting into each of these systems it's not everyone that's reporting into every system necessarily, and so you can find that there are slight gaps in everyone's coverage, and I think it's about eliminating those gaps. To me.
Okay. Thanks. Issam, Rewa, do you have any reflections on that issue? On the opportunities to learn from the project for the region, or beyond is fine. Do you get the feeling through the project that there are lessons learned here which may be applicable elsewhere?
Donovan, the questions for me?
Yes, please. Whoever was going to grab the microphone between you. That's fine.
I grab it first, so I will answer. Some opportunities based on the project we learned. It's the partnership are essential between different stakeholders, even the private sectors, and with the government, with the United Nations, with the NGOs to improve and support this sector. As I said, also this waste as an opportunity, we can use it also. So that's why the partnership is important. Waste as an opportunity is creating the green jobs and also waste to energy. That's also a lesson learned. And we found also the lack of the public awareness that's required from the government staff, from the other stakeholders that working in related, it's required more awareness and also can be prioritized which type of the awareness and which level needs to be provided. So that's in short, in Iraq, I would say it was lesson learned. And the main things, as we mentioned in the presentation and highlighted by Jordan also, it's the data. Because the decision should be made based on the data. In Iraq, we use it for some scenarios, 22 years data in the past to see how was the pollutions and to create and what we are expecting in the future. So this data also can be used and link it with the other clusters for the decision makers. In Iraq, also the SLC piece integrated to NDC. That was also something good was learned from the project. So that's in short, Donovan.
Okay. One final question, I think, because we're running out of time a little, is there was some specific questions on the waste to bioenergy focus and waste to energy, and some questions around the commercial viability and the infrastructure around that, whether it lends itself to prospects which are sustainable and also obviously moving away from just incineration, which have a less emissions impact. So, Billy, I'll come to you first. This is the final sort of round of questions, but are there opportunities for waste to bioenergy in Jordan? Did they lend themselves as a potential solution going forward, particularly for the largest landfills?
I think so. It's a tricky one. I think that some types of anaerobic digestion and bioenergy plant can be quite expensive and require a lot of investment and a lot of maintenance, but it's not the only way of doing it. You know, depending on the design of the bioreactor that you have, they don't have to be extremely expensive or require a great deal of maintenance. I know that the main pilot in Jordan, as I understand it, did actually have to close. They were using like a floating drum type reactor, and they had issues there with contamination, with corrosion of the drum, which is not uncommon. But you know, things like fixed dome reactors, for example, don't necessarily have those problems, and they can be run perhaps once they're built, they can be run perhaps more cost effectively. There are also some quite interesting studies of, for example, of using decentralized, like smaller scale anaerobic digestion. I think India has a really good track record on this, actually, of having sort of like for example, village level anaerobic digestion facilities, which seem to really have been quite effective and quite cost effective. Those ones, they're not generating electricity for grid circulation, which I understand is an issue in Jordan anyway, because of the energy contracts it's tied into. It makes it difficult to feed waste generated electricity into the grid, but they're often used more locally for heat and just heat and power generation directly. So I think it requires some creative thinking, but yeah, I think it can be done.
Okay. Isam and Rawa, any sort of reflections on the waste of bioenergy opportunities around the Iraq study? Rawa.
Okay, waste to energy, bioenergy opportunities. It's anaerobic digestion, which covers organic waste into biogas for electricity heat or upgraded biomethane and landfill gas recovery, composting, and we have reviews derived fuel. It's about opportunities.
Thank you, Rob. I think if I could have a final word before I pass back to Camille to close as well. I think it was commented on a few times as well, and it was something that struck us, CCAC, through the project, was the creation of very innovative groupings of stakeholders that otherwise didn't get together. The establishment of, the advisory group in Jordan, the establishment of stakeholder meetings in Iraq to be able to share data, particularly from the municipal to the national level, often for the first time. And hopefully not only in a very sort of a basic sense of sharing data or being aware of data and so on, but the important qualitative aspect of building relationships and awareness of each other's role in waste management systems. And I hope that that is a legacy of the two projects going forward. And it's certainly been, I think, a lesson that is very applicable. There were some questions about, what are the lessons from this project going forward for other countries. And one of the lessons was the establishment of these advisory groups and the establishment of these multi-stakeholder platforms, not only to generate and to share data, but also to establish key relationships going forward. And I hope that's an important outcome that is sustained by the countries beyond the project as well. Camille, I'm just going to pass back to you. That was the end of the Q&A for now. There's a number of questions there as well, which we can get to, and obviously we'll be uploading the materials to the event site as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Donovan, and thanks to all the speakers of today's webinar, and thank you to all the participants, also for staying slightly longer than expected. As Donovan said, we will share the slides and the recording on the event page, so you can rewatch or share around. And don't hesitate to also send us an email if you have follow-up questions on this topic. And on that, I wish you a very good rest of the day.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
See you again.